Hello, 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 hello. I can call back to my childhood with CKVR watching sitcoms from the 1950s and 60s. It's like Andy Mayberry, Beverly Hillbillies, I Love Lucy, and the Three Stooges. Whatever. I am a depository of North American culture, whether I like it or not. Okay, so meanwhile, while I'm having this spat with LinkedIn over a disabled joke, uh, my goodness, some people are extremely sensitive, and censorship is the enemy of the artist. So, um, I'm going to speak out against that. And again, in the meantime, I'm watching The Cross and the Switchblade, which is the story of Don Wilkinson in the 1980s New York, which was an epicenter for heroin and cocaine abuse. And obviously they used to treat marijuana very much the same way as because it's Schedule One in the states, right? If I remember correctly, in the same way as these other addictive substances. But quite frankly, the attitudes of the past towards marijuana are not well founded. And I have a paper here I'm going to indicate in a second with the screen recording, which has to do with the pain index of post operative post operation pain index. And way I'm going to correlate that is to, well, of course, to this current setting here in London, with obviously we have a research hospital, we have a children's hospital, and while some people will be like, how come you're always on the gay and the transgender pain train? It's because it's real, because of the drug usage and MDMA, the euphoria, the sustainment of this matrices of illusion that is the lie of addiction. And a lot of people don't see the way out of addiction, because if you abuse especially amphetamines, it rots your brain. It absolutely, they'll rot your brain. The same with caffeine abuse and with cocaine abuse, and then in conjunction with of course mixing all these different substances. And I'm sure Mad will agree with me on this, because alcohol is not a solution. It it's a solvent, okay? And so the more you drink out, and then one of the other things is that, well, the more you drink alcohol, the more you become financially insolvent. And of course that leads to other issues such as fatty liver and cancer, right? And we have the cancer treatment center here. And of course, again, what the paper is indicating is that when marijuana is used in conjunction with hydromorphone, that it's more effective. But there's not that much information as to the furthering studies of the endocannabinoids. And there's one doctor here that I know of in London that was the pioneer in the area in prescribing marijuana to patients as an alternative to Oxycontin, oxycodone, hydromorphone, or the other morphine variants that are derivatives, of course, of opium and of heroin. So it's a double-edged sword. But the thing is that the same doctor, I'm sure, could probably attribute to case-by-case basis, through scientific observation and method, the effects, both positive and negative, of the usage and abuse of ketamine. And I've personally witnessed the ketamine abuse in different locations, not only here, or I know of it here in London, but also in Kelowna. Being on the front lines is where you got to be. And that's where you following in the footsteps of people before me within the mental health care system, and the social work, or social social assistance. I don't know. And this especially affects homeless people, because or the very poor, because of the fallout And again, this is an image in this crossing the Switchblade where Wilkinson is standing there by a fallout shelter, right? It's what happens after war, and I've said this before. The junkie soldiers of the 1980s that came back from Vietnam, addicted to morphine, because of the euphoric effects that are induced by the usage. And again, this is all documented information. I'm not lying through my teeth here. This is it's all out there. The answers are right in front of us if we want to see them. And because of the industrial nature of London and the surrounding area, a lot of the boomers, or older people, and even in the middle years, say of my generation and a little bit younger, have fallen into an abusive relationship with marijuana, if not alcohol, that which is readily available. And then, of course, we have a healthcare community that has ready access to behind the counter drugs, prescription drugs, like ketamine, and that and then also the distribution of MDMA, if not crystal meth, which again I've seen this for myself. I've seen rocks the size of freaking, I don't know, like gumballs. Is ridiculous. And then again, this is one of those things that can implicate me as an observer, as a participant, because the cops are so burnt out, they're not able to do a thorough job, and shoddy police work is how people die. When the evidence is destroyed, or firsthand accounts are not taken seriously, then that's a problem. Again, when you start drinking for boredom, and you start mixing alcohol with Ativan and other anti-anxiety medications, or mood stabilizing medications, these antipsychotics or whatever else, and then it throws the person's mind and their hormones into absolute upheaval, and that leads to an even further questioning of self, because of the propaganda that follows and supports the Rainbow Warrior crowd, quite frankly. That's yes, that is a reference to the Warriors. Yeah, the of course the movie about the gang violence in New York at the time. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I'm looking at you, police chief, here. Okay, all right, let's work together. Let's not fucking do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's insanity. And again, it comes to a point where people of our generation have to rise to the occasion and take initiative, and hence why I did that 20K walk, and why I've looked around in my times on my bicycle when I had the time, and when I didn't have anything else to do, to seek out these people that live down by the river, right? Because again, not all of them are bad people, but some of them are, right? And that's the problem, is that when you're carrying the armor of God, you also have to have a blade with you in order to protect yourself, right? It's not a joke, right? A shield and a sword, just like a crusader. Now, again, I'm not a joke. I've seen this for myself. I've seen people within the trades, fall into these traps of life. And I can think of one person in general, and he was an alcoholic, and he was at Calgary. He was working at Calgary at Longview Aviation at the same time I was, and he could barely stand. He could barely stand. He would have to go out into the parking lot, chug back some vodka or whatever else, and then go back into work. It was very sad, what happened to him. I have no idea what happened. I have no idea what's happened to him afterwards, after the incident in which I almost died because of suffocation inside the aircraft wing at Longview Aviation. So again, when people are not believing me and not taking me seriously, right, that's a problem. It's a real problem, because that indicates collusion and corruption and incompetence within the legal system, and also the healthcare system, if not the leadership of the industries at large. Because no one wants to be confronted with the conflict that, okay, so there's a threat to, say, a side hustle, all right? or some gang involvement, because that's another thing, is that with prostitution follows drug use, and then with drug use comes violence, because of the, of course, the behavioral implications of coming down from all of these addictive substances. And again, nicotine itself is another. I've explained to the police officer who came to visit me very assertively, right? This is just the foreground. You're not seeing everything, right? And you're listening to all the wrong people, and you're telling me lies to bait me into a situation which could become potentially violent and would lead to an arrest and detainment. I am not stupid. I know exactly how this works. And I've been at this, I've been watching people and their problems for a very long time, because of Team Challenge Farm and because of my parents, to their credit. Because we saw the problem, right? And the community doesn't like outstanding Christians, even within a conservative community, especially that is one that is as rich as London and the general area. Again, London historically has the largest number, or largest percentage, largest concentration of millionaires in Ontario, if not Canada. And again, all of these rich people, they have drug habits, and they don't like being exposed, and they don't like when their supply is being cut off. And so they'll do whatever they can, however they can, in order to keep the current status quo the way that it is, because it benefits them and it doesn't benefit other people. And this infects the rest of the economy, right? Because when you have despondency, then you have drug usage and you have prostitution. And I've again, throughout my history here in London, I've witnessed things, I've seen shit, and it's not a joke. It's not a joke, right? CCH and Beale are just a few blocks down from the police station, and in between the police station and the high school is a methadone clinic. So this is why I get so fucking angry, is because people are not taking me seriously. Like, what's it gonna take for people to take me seriously? How many more lives are gonna be sacrificed to this suicide cult? The Saturn worship, the cult of Baal, the self-fulfilling prophecies, right? These religious attitudes, and also the protectionism, right? That happens because, again, the police officers are not getting paid enough to do their jobs. They're overworked. I bet you they're freaking snorting freaking caffeine pills off the dash, for all I care. This is not a joke. This is real. This is real life, and real life is not a video game. And I've spent a lot of time examining the culture through the media, because the art, right, is what's it? All of life is a stage. And life imitates art imitates life. So there's a lot of truth in the media, so that I don't I would not have to expose myself, because, quite frankly, I'm a vulnerable person. I am. And my expertise is in analytics, and in the information and the intelligence and the logic and the philosophy that stands behind the science. Because a lot of religious people will ignore the science, but the science started within the church, because it did. Because monks were responsible within the convents, not only for the production of beer, but also for creating the illuminated manuscripts. And what's it? The St. Thomas Aquinas, right? He was a scientist, right? This is so easy to forget. or it's memory hold on purpose, because Christians don't want to acknowledge and don't want to act. We want to remain like the people that pass over the leper in the story of the Good Samaritan. So you tell me, what is your life worth? What is the life of a homeless person worth? What is my life worth for having done something about it and speaking up and having to take on these huge monsters, these really big monsters of, not only the pharmaceutical companies, but the governments and the gangs that benefit from the violence and the conflicts and the hormone treatments and the surgeries, this big old monster, right? Because it's all correlated. It's not, and caused. It's a real quagmire, right? Because it's a snake that eats its own tail, and it's such a huge task, such a huge Sisyphean task, to take this on. But once the ball is rolling, right, the momentum behind it is what will sustain it up the rest of the hill, right? And then once we get to the top, we can push this fucking monster over the cliff, or into the sea, back to where it belongs, right? Back into la mer, back under the surface where it belongs, because it doesn't belong in our community. It doesn't belong here, right? This is what Wilkinson was trying to do, and what Teen Challenge does is attempts and fails quite often, quite frankly, to replace the pursuit of dopamine supplementation with praise and worship. But it doesn't work, right? You can't just cold turkey people, and you can't just give people the cold shoulder just because they like smoking some fucking pot. You fucking idiot. Judgmental attitudes and the lack of communication. Lack of communication is one of the biggest faults when leads to an incident or an injury or a death unnecessarily. This is the baker's dirty dozen. This is when we don't talk to each other, we don't see each other, don't have respect, right? Then it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Communication breakdown. The whole thing, every single church is then responsible. Every person in the community is responsible for that death. Every person is then responsible for making that person homeless, or threatening to make them homeless, because ultimatums don't work with intelligent people. And this is why the outdated attitudes of people who have rested on their laurels and don't know what else to do, because they're paralyzed by grief and suffering of their own making. And this is the truth, because every religious person at some point in their life is guilty of this. And not just religious people, but also atheistic people or those within the scientific community. So my generation will bring about the change, brother. Because I've been listening. I've been watching for a very long time. I'm fucking sick of this shit. I'm fucking sick of it. So to you, the police chief, and then also to the Police Chief Association of Canada, right? Or say the PAOC. Because you tell me who's making a difference, right? And then I'll show you how we fail. Because that's my prerogative as an engineer, is to find the faults in the system and then get rid of them. Systemize, optimize. Let's get this shit in gear. Let's get the ball rolling, okay? Let's stop fucking fighting over these stupid cultural movements. We don't have time for this anymore. Because what I want to bring about in this community is a reason for people to live again. And what tradesmen want is respect. They want respect, and they're not getting it. And we've thrown tradespeople under the bus onto the rails of the train of progress, of automation, of tech culture. Right? And then we have all of these people experimenting with psychedelics, which is the worst thing, right? Because psychedelics are not playthings. They're not recreational at all. LSD is not to be trifled with. DMT is not to be trifled with. Mescaline is not to be trifled with. Ketamine is not to be trifled with. Excuse me. Mushrooms, LSA, even absinthe by some people is not to be trifled with. Yet, when we hear about these things, we judge them because we don't understand, and because we don't want to understand, because of the fear and the anxiety and the paralysis of the devil, because the devil works through consent. And when you listen to the devil, you get exactly what you want. And what you get is your own personal hell. Thank you for listening.